Hey guys, back again with another video. This time another review on the Crash Bandicoot N-sane Trilogy, as it's called. This came out recently on the PS4. I think it's like a timed exclusive. I'm pretty sure it's going to be coming to Xbox One eventually. But yeah, this is basically a remaster of the first three Crash games on the PS1. And yeah, all the visuals were redone. They changed some things with like the physics, I'm pretty sure. You can play as Coco in the three games now, which is newly added. But for the most part, this actually tries to stay true to the original games. Now, Naughty Dog developed the original three. They didn't have anything to do with this one. Activision, I think, still owns the license, so they had a developer by the name of Vicarious Visions do the remastering. And yeah, they did an amazing job. I really enjoyed my time with this trilogy. It really makes me miss 3D platformers. The games can be dated in some aspects, but I think for the most part, I enjoyed all three of them. Now, my history with the Crash series, I should start with the review with that. The first three I never played as a kid. The PS1, I didn't really grow up with it all that much. I did own a PS1 at one point, but I maybe owned it for like 6 months, and then I sold it for some reason. I still don't know why. I don't remember why I sold it, but I only really owned like 5 or 6 games for it, and Crash Bandicoot 3 happened to be one of the games. I remember buying it I think it was Walmart, and I remember the cover, he's on the motorcycle, and it made me think that it might have been a racing game, so I was half regretting my purchase, but when I got home, it turned out, oh no, it's a platformer like what I wanted. So Crash 3 is a pretty nostalgic game for me. It was never one of my all-time favorite games or anything. I beat it once, but that was it when I was a kid. I wasn't like a lot of people that played these games to death when they were kids and grew up with the series and tried to 100% them. I was not like that. I just kind of played through it once. I enjoyed it. I have nostalgia for it, but it's never been one of my all-time favorite games or anything. But it was really fun to go back to it in this compilation, and I enjoyed it enough in the past that I really wanted to play these first two games, so this seemed like a good purchase for me. This game is not full price either. They're not charging full price for it. It's a budget, more of a budget price, which is great. But yeah, overall, really enjoyed my time with it. I think if you like platformers of any kind, I think you should definitely check these out. And I think for the most part, they hold up well. You don't have to have played any of them to really get a lot of fun out of this. For me, as an example, the first two games, I've never played them before, and I had a great time with them. I had some issues here and there. I've streamed the first game and a bit of the second game, and we'll talk about that, when we talk about, the differences between the three. The remaster is pretty cool, where, the graphics, I'll start with the graphics, really, for all three games. The graphics in this are fantastic. I really love the environments in this game, as far as how they look, really colorful, vibrant environments in this game. I like the character models quite a bit as well. It's a pretty noticeable difference when you compare it to the PS1 originals. And I guess the review I kind of should start out with the differences from what I gather. Now, I'm not a hardcore Crash Bandicoot fan, so I can't list every single difference, but there was a video someone put out showing the way Crash lands compared to the original series, and the physics are definitely a little different. And I guess some people find that the remasters are actually harder than the originals because of the way Crash lands. And yeah, there's definitely a difference in the physics when you compare the games, and people that played the original games to death might be put off at first, but I'm sure they could probably get used to it. It was a little, for me, someone hasn't played the games in a while, or at least that third game in a long time, it was hard to notice too much of a difference, but I will say this is a problem with the original games as well. It can be very hard to judge your jumps, the depth perception in this game, especially when you're running towards the camera. There's a lot of stages where you'll run towards the camera, and the obstacles that come up in front of you, it's so hard to tell when they're going to come up. As soon as they come up, you have a split second to react. It's very hard to see what's going to be coming up ahead of you. So those levels can be a bit frustrating. Some of the jumps can be a bit frustrating as well. I guess we'll talk about Crash 1 first here. Crash 1. Where to start with this game? Okay, so this is probably one of the hardest platformers I've ever played. This game, and if you've watched my stream, you'll know, this game kicked my ass. Now, a lot of people are actually complaining about the difficulty of this game, and a lot of journalists, for some fucking strange reason, are bringing up Dark Souls and comparing it to Dark Souls as if any hard game these days has to be compared to Dark Souls, and I don't know, it's one of those things where it's like, it's really irritating because first, the games are so different from one another, and second, the difficulty is not the reason why the Dark Souls games or the Souls games are notable. Those games have so many other qualities. The challenge just happens to be a part of them. You know, it's like, I don't know, I feel like people really get too hung up on the difficulty of the Souls games and don't focus on anything else. Like, I don't like the Souls games because they're hard. And I don't know, it's really frustrating seeing them, every game that's hard compared to them, as if like the Souls games are like the standard for like difficult games in the modern age. I don't know, it's frustrating. I really am annoyed by that. But that aside, Crash 1 is fucking hard, man. So the levels in this game require such perfect precision platforming. And a lot of these levels are incredibly long as well. Some of them, it takes a while to get to checkpoints. The game gives you a decent amount of lives, but it's still not enough. It's the kind of game where even if you had the max lives, 99, you would still die a bunch on these levels. And I've started to realize that maybe it's just me, because I'm seeing a lot of people actually able to platinum the first Crash game, and some people that played it to death when they were kids having no problem with the game. And I'm just like, how the fuck can you play this game and not have a struggle? It's so hard. Like, I found this harder than any Mega Man game, any Donkey Kong Country game, any Mario game. Hell, the Lost Levels is the only Mario game I've played that's harder than this. Like, this game is brutal. There's these a couple levels in particular. So I guess I should talk about, like, Crash, how they play. They are traditional 3D platformers, but not in the Mario 64 style of design. These are basically a lot of the sections you're running from left to right, like what you see here, but it's still 3D, so you can actually kind of walk backwards and forwards on like in all four directions, basically, on these platforms. So there's a pseudo 2D, 3D kind of thing going on. And then you have the levels where you're running towards the camera, well, not the camera, to the front of the level, and then on like these different pathways, and you're jumping over platforms and things like that. And then there's the other levels where you're kind of running towards the camera. There's other levels where you might be riding like this hog, and it kind of goes through the level really fast, and you can only move left and right and jump. Then there's some vehicle type levels in later Crash games. Each Crash game has more variety to the levels as you go throughout them. The first game, though, is basically just a very traditional platformer. Like, pretty much all you're doing in that game is platforming, and some of the toughest platforming I've come across in a game. Some of the levels, okay, so the first major choke point is Native Fortress. It's not too far. It's like one of the first levels in the game, actually. I think there's 25 levels in each game, and this level's, I think, like the 5th or 6th level, and it's really long, and it's just filled with all these treacherous platforms and these shield enemies that are really annoying, and these flame platforms that are really tricky to time. That's like the first major difficulty spike of the game, and from that point on, the game is just brutal. It's so hard that I needed to take breaks. I couldn't play the first game for long sessions. It just took too much out of me. It was so draining. Now, that's not to say that it's like this horrible challenge or it's poorly designed, because it's actually not. It makes your hands sweat in a good way. I enjoyed the challenge. It's the kind of game I don't think I would want to play it again. It was just too exhausting of an experience. But there's these levels called the bridge levels. One of them, the first one's the Road to Nowhere. The second one's called the High Road. And these levels are sadistic, just plain sadistic, where you're on like this like bridge high up in the sky, and all the planks on this bridge, a lot of them will like fall when you stand on them for too long. And then there's other planks that fall immediately that you can't even really land on. And these jumps in this level are so tight. They require just absolutely perfect platforming. The level starts out really hard right off the bat because you have to do these incredibly tricky jumps that are with hardly any margin for error. And then by the time you get to the second half of the level, they start adding these enemies on the bridge that like kind of go back and forth on the bridge. Then they add turtles that you have to bounce off of, and it is absolutely baffling. It is insane how hard it is. I must have lost like fucking 50 lives just on the first bridge level alone. However, I did actually find a trick where you can actually run on the ropes to the left and the right side of the bridge, and I felt like cheating a little bit, but you still have to kind of master walking on the ropes. You have to like constantly readjust Crash when he's on the ropes. If you don't, you'll fall off really easily, and you still have to use the bridge at other certain points. So yeah, unfortunately I did use a trick to get past them because I would lose all these lives at these levels, and it was like I was making no progress. And yeah, they're absolutely insane. They're the types of levels I think most people would just give up when they reach them. There's all of these other hard levels. There's one level later called Lights Out where you have to go as fast as you can getting these the Tiki statue to kind of light up your way in front of you. And then you've got all like these swinging axes and really tricky jumps and respawning rat enemies. I played this level on stream and it took me forever to beat this level. I wasted so many lives. It's just, this game is relentless. The first game is absolutely relentless, and it blows my mind that some people actually are able to platinum it and find it easy. Maybe it's because I don't have the muscle memory. Either that or I'm just bad at the game, although I did okay on Crash 2 and 3. But yeah, it might be a muscle memory thing because I never played this game when I was a kid. I don't know the levels. I don't know the layouts. The controls are new to me. Whereas like the Mega Man games, I've played them to death as a kid, so they're easy to me now. But maybe someone that plays Crash 1 or Mega Man 1 both for the first time, they might find Crash easier. But I don't know. I had a hell of a time getting through it. It was just brutal. Fun, but brutal. It's a little archaic, that first game. It's definitely the weakest of the bunch. I don't know. I think there's some unfair design here and there in it. And it's just, I don't know, it doesn't have like the warp rooms from the later games. There's not as much variety. There's not as many moves. You don't get new moves like you do in the other games. And just the level design in general is, I think, just not as strong as later games. But still, I actually enjoyed it, the first game. I guess another whole mechanic of the game, too, before I move on to the other two games, there's the Tiki statue mechanic. So if you find the Tiki statues in the crates that you find throughout the levels, you'll get an extra hit point, basically. And those are like, oh my god, they're like essential for a lot of different parts of the game. You'll obviously have lives to find. If you get a game over, you lose all your lives, and then you get a game over, and you have to restart the whole level from the beginning, which can really suck. But it's better than the original game. In this one, you can save after every level. In the original game, for what I could understand, you actually have to get 3 of the Coco icon things in the level to save afterwards. So if you missed them, you'd have to do, and then got a game over later, you'd have to do a bunch of levels over again, which is brutal. Like, that would just drive me insane. And then, what else was there? Basically, there's Wampa fruit. I like to call them apples. They're basically apples. Getting 100 of those will get you a life. And then there's basically trying to 100% the game, which basically adds a lot to the game, but at the same time, it's just way too difficult that I didn't even bother with it. I mean, the first Crash is hard enough just to beat the game. And then 100% is just absolute insanity. Because what you have to do is, each level has a gem that you have to collect, basically, to work towards the 100% completion. And to get the gem, you have to break every box in the level without dying. Like, okay, so a lot of the boxes are hard to get in general, and a lot of them are very risky, where if you miss the box, you'll die. So yeah, you have to go through the entire level breaking every box and not dying, and some of these levels are like fucking like 10 to 15 minutes long. And again, like I was saying, I was dying like so many times just trying to beat these levels. And to think of trying to actually go through these levels, getting all the boxes without dying, pure insanity. Absolute insanity. I major props to anyone that got 100% the first Crash Bandicoot. You are fucking incredible, and you are like a god at video games. But so there's that. part of it to 100% the game. And that actually adds an interesting wrinkle to the levels, because basically there's all like sorts of different like mini puzzles with how you actually have to break all the boxes, which I kind of like, and I think that gets stronger and stronger design-wise as you go throughout the different games. But to also 100% the game, you have to get all the relics. Now, to get like the platinum trophy, I think you just need to get the gold relics, but there's also platinum relics. And these have to do with the time trials, where when you play a level for the second time, there'll be a clock icon in the beginning. And if you hit it, the timer starts, and you basically have to beat the level within a target time. There's a target time for the gold one, a blue one, I think, and then the platinum one. And so you have to basically speed run the game now. So you have to go as fast as possible in these levels that require extremely precise platforming, that some of them go on forever as well. And then basically you have to just know the level so intimately. And then you can't die, by the way. Yeah, the time trials, all the checkpoints are removed, so you have to do it all in one go, this one perfect run. And the time limits are very strict. I tried to get some of these gold relics, and I couldn't even get the blue ones in some of the early levels. So to think of getting like a gold relic on the bridge levels is just, it blows my fucking mind. I can't, the difficulty of that is just off the charts. It's just insane to think about. So yeah. If you're planning on going for the Platinum Trophy in this game and you have never played it before, or you're not too familiar with it, God help you. God help you. That would be just utter torture. It would make me start to hate the game, I would think. But and that's like 100%ing the game. Like that's hard in all three Crash games. I feel like I could probably do it in Crash 3 because it's actually far easier than the other two. But there are still some really annoying levels to try to get time trials and get all like the boxes and the hidden gems and things like that. I guess other kind of mechanics, and some of these are in the later games rather than the first game. You can get colored gems in the different levels where you have to require certain conditions, and then they unlock different paths throughout some of the other levels. There's death paths that start in the second game where if you don't die up to a certain point, you'll unlock a new path for the level, and a lot of this stuff was added in like Crash 2 and 3. Another reason why I think they're better games than the first one, but yeah. That is about what you would expect from the gameplay from these games. But moving on to the second game, it's a lot immediately apparent how much better the second game is when you play it. The controls, I feel, are a little smoother. It's actually faster. And when you beat the final boss of the second game, you get these speed shoes where if you hold R2, you can actually go even faster. They're essential for getting the relics, like the time trials. But yeah, the second game, the level design is stronger right off the bat. It's got a much better difficulty curve. It's not like Crash 1 where it's like the first few levels aren't too bad, but then it just spikes through the roof and never goes back down, with the exception of like the factory levels in Crash 1, which were surprisingly easy for where they were in the game. But yeah, Crash 2 has a smoother difficulty curve, though it gets just as hard as the first one by the end. The last two worlds in Crash 2 are actually quite difficult, but they're still really enjoyable. So yeah, there's new moves that Crash has in the second game. You can do this really cool slide jump, like you just saw it in the gameplay here, actually not too long ago, which is really good for getting over large gaps, and it just makes the game more enjoyable to play. There's like a ground pound type move you can do, like the body slam. Yeah, it's more moves, which is great. There's more variety to the levels in the second game as well. I really enjoyed my time with the second one. The jetpack levels were the only ones I wasn't crazy about, but they're not terrible. And I do like the different bonus rounds that are in the second Crash games, like the death routes. The levels are a little more open-ended because they have more multiple paths than they did in the previous game. 100%ing it would still be just a total nightmare because you actually have to do a lot of backtracking in Crash 2 to get to the, like 100% levels, at least from what I understand, like how the gems work. And then there's nitro boxes that were added in the second game as well, which are boxes that you can't, if you touch them, you die immediately. Compared to like the TNT boxes where they were like on a timer and then they would explode. Yeah, I guess I didn't talk about the bosses actually in the Crash games. A lot of people complain about the bosses and think they're too basic or too simple. I don't think they're too bad. For the most part, I actually enjoyed the bosses in these games. Because Crash really only has one health point before you die, the Tiki statues aside, I feel like they had to make these bosses really short and easy, because if they tried to make these bosses too complex or too long, it would just become really frustrating retrying them. So for the most part, they have pretty basic patterns, and they're all pretty short. But I actually like that. I think they work well with what the game has, like with the controls and things like that. There are a few bad ones. There are a few annoying ones. Ripperoo in the first game I thought was really aggravating until I discovered like a strategy to easily get rid of them. There's like this one boss in, I think it's Crash 2, where you have to you have a gun and you're moving from left to right and you're shooting different like weak points on this. I think it's like a robot. That can get a little tedious. It's really hard to properly aim your shots, and that battle I think goes on a little too long. But other than that, I pretty much enjoyed all the bosses in these games. I actually really like them. I mean, yeah, they're pretty simple. The patterns aren't too complicated or anything, but I think they work well for the game. And there's one at the end of each world. Another cool thing about the second game are the warp rooms. It's not just one island. You're going from level to level. Each world you can actually choose one of 5 levels you want to go to, which I really like that. It adds a little bit of open-endedness to the game. And then you're also, yeah, collecting the crystals in 2 and 3 in each level. They're easy to get though. They're not like well hidden or anything like that. But yeah, Crash 2. I enjoyed it quite a bit more than the first one. A lot of people think this is like the best one in the series. There's also a lot more character to it as well. There's the story. There's not much to say about the story in each game. You're going after Dr. Cortex. I think he's like doing experiments on animals in the first game, and Crash is one of them, and he escapes, and then you have to beat him. The second game is pretty weird, where it's like he wants you to gather all the crystals, and it's obviously like a plan, this evil plan. But Crash just is like dumbfounded and just gets the crystals for him anyways. I don't know, but Crash 2 is cool because there's actually like little mini cutscenes like you're seeing here, where the enemies, the bad guys, actually talk to you. So there's more story in the second game, and it's got more humor and charm to it. The first game, yeah, nothing like this. It's just going level to level to level. So yeah, that's another thing I liked about the second game. The music is far superior in the second game as well. The music is kind of, I don't know, generic in the first game, but the second game, it's really good. Like it's really upbeat and really fits the tone of the game. Some really catchy songs in the second game. I think it has the best soundtrack of the 3. And then there's a bunch of different bonus levels in the second game as well. There's secret exits in a bunch of the levels. Yeah, the Crash 2 is a great game. It really holds up these days. And then finally, moving on to Crash 3, the game I played as a kid. This is my favorite of the trilogy. Nostalgia aside, I think it's the strongest one. It's got the smoothest difficulty curve, even though it's significantly easier than the other 2 games. But at the same time, it's not like too easy. And then there's just more moves you get in Crash 3. Every boss you kill gets you a new move. And some of them are really fun, like the double jump or the extra powerful spin that makes you spin longer. There's more variety to the levels. You have like these vehicle levels, which are way better than you would expect. Like you have the levels where you ride on the tiger, which I think are really fun. And then you have I think they're airplane levels, which are surprisingly fun. I really enjoyed the airplane levels. You do have the motorcycle levels, though. They're probably the only thing I don't like about Crash 3. The first 2 motorcycle levels aren't too bad, but the last one is just brutal. It controls like shit, and you have to get first place to get the crystal in the level. So it's a little frustrating, but luckily there's only 3 of those levels. And then the actual platforming levels in the Crash 3 are really fun as well. And the music is phenomenal in the third game as well. And then it's got even more character and charm to it than the second game has. The third game is, yeah, definitely my favorite. It's not like I don't love it like significantly more than the second game, and I could probably see why someone would prefer the second game. The second game's harder. It definitely offers a harder challenge to it, but I thought the third game was still really enjoyable and held up really well. Interestingly enough, the third game is the only game I didn't get a game over on. The first game, the game over screen I saw so often. The second game, I got a game over a few times, especially in the last 2 worlds. But Crash 3, yeah, no game overs. By the end of the when I finished the game, I had like 30 lives. So yeah, Crash 3 is definitely a lot easier than the other 2. But yeah, I mean, that about covers it. Basically covered everything. A longer review than I thought, but yeah, I really enjoyed this package. I think it's really well done. I think if you're a fan of the series, it's really cool to see what they've done with the environments and the visuals and then the physics as well. And if you love platformers in general, I think you'll still find a lot to enjoy here. I mean, the gameplay in these games, yeah, it's fairly basic. You know, it's nothing crazy. But it's fun. The games, the most important thing is that they're fun, and I had a ton of fun with this game, this collection. I don't know. I miss when Naughty Dog made games that actually were fun to play. Like I don't know. I feel like they kind of peaked with like not Jak 3, Jak and Daxter and Crash 3. To me, like that was their peak, and then after that, it was just. And every game they did was just like basically trying to be a movie. I don't know. It's kind of a bummer, but it's kind of funny that I've enjoyed these 3 games way more than any Uncharted game or Last of Us, for that matter. But yeah, the only way I would I might not recommend this collection if you don't like platformers. If you hate platformers, whether it be 2D or 3D, then I'd say this is probably worth a skip because it's a bit dated in some of its design. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, like this kind of platformer, this like straight ahead, platformer where without many gimmicks and just going from level to level. I miss this kind of thing, especially 3D platformers of this type. Yeah, for the most part, I think they hold up quite well. But that's it, guys. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.